Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome. I am here with my second 2026 quarterly collection check-in. This is a format that I am trying out this year. So this is the second video in this little series for 2026. I will link the first in the description box below. Basically, the idea of the quarterly collection check-in is to look at what has changed in my divination tool collection, predominantly decks, in the last couple of months. So in this video, I'll be looking back at April, May, and June 2026. And the format that I've been following, which I will timestamp in the description box as well, is to start by sharing any decks that I have paid for in the last quarter. So that includes decks that I've purchased. That would also include things like pre-orders that I've put in, or Kickstarter campaigns that have closed that I have backed, for example. So this first section of decks that I have paid for in the last quarter are not necessarily always all decks that I already physically have with me. Sometimes I'm still waiting for them, but this is a grouping that makes sense to me to share. And I'll show some images up here if I don't have a particular deck in yet. The second thing that I want to share is the decks that I've received in the past quarter, but paid for at some other time. So these would be Kickstarter campaigns that arrived, or pre-orders that arrived, as well as, perhaps gifts, if there have been any gifts, things like that. Decks that have, come into my possession in the past quarter, but were not purchased in the past quarter. Third, I will look at decks that I have rehomed in the last quarter. And fourth and finally, I will check in and share with you what is on my decks to explore list, which is kind of like my non-committal version of a wish list. So without further ado, the decks that I have purchased this past quarter, April, May, and June, there are 3. And all of these 3 I have to show you. They were all purchases made during the last quarter that I have received. I actually did not back any Kickstarters or other kinds of campaigns in the last quarter, and I also did not place any pre-orders. So anything that I'm still waiting for has been, something that I've been waiting for longer than that. The 3 decks that I purchased in no particular order. The first one was on my to explore list last quarter, and I ended up adding it to my collection. And that is the Wisdom of Place deck. This is by Elizabeth Boltz and Chip Sullivan. The subtitle is Elements of Sacred Landscapes. And it's a cool deck. It comes with a book. There is another book for this that is a larger book that's sold separately. I don't have it. Ordering this deck was a little bit complicated, considering that I think that this is a mass market deck. It's published by ORO Editions. It was a little bit hard to get. I actually ended up going to eBay for this. So I haven't ordered the book yet because the book seems to be similarly challenging to get here, but I may do that at some point. The guidebook is actually pretty good, I think. It comes with a little description and some words of wisdom, including environmental and creative interpretations, which I think is cool. And, as the name suggests, Elements of Sacred Landscapes, it is a landscape-based deck, which if you watch my channel, you probably know is very much my thing. The artwork is in a couple of different styles. There are some collage and some drawing. And this is, again, a collaboration between 2 creators. And so there are these kind of 2 quite distinct styles. The collage cards on the one hand, and then the drawn cards on the other. I do find this to be pretty cohesive. I don't think that every collaborative deck with multiple artists is necessarily always the most consistent, but this, despite the different styles, I think reads really well and does read consistently. So I've been enjoying exploring this deck. I will say, though, that for me personally, and I knew that this was a possibility, for me, this can only be a Oracle deck. And the reason that it can only be an Oracle deck, even though it does follow the 78 card, majors and suits kind of structure, is the way that they have done the minors, really. And there's an explanation in this guidebook about this, that the minor arcana represent specific elements and features of sacred landscapes and are subdivided into 4 suits of 14 cards each, representing earth, air, water, and wood. Wood and not fire. And I don't find so far that all of the minor suits really map onto what I would expect in the tarot so well. I think that the majors are very tarot to me. The world card is as Genius Loci, for example. That makes a lot of sense. Card 13, Death, here is Metamorphosis, which is not necessarily a change I always like, but I think in a nature-based deck like this, it can work. 20, Judgment is the closed loop. I think that the majors work better than the minors as a tarot, so I have been using this as an oracle, generally drawing a single card and maybe combining with some other decks, and I've been really enjoying this deck. If you have the big book and you have thoughts on whether I should get the big book based on your experience, please let me know in the comments. I don't feel like I'm missing anything by not having it, but I also instinctively, if there's another book to go with the deck, I always want to give it a look, so still deciding. The second deck that I purchased in the last quarter, I also got on eBay, actually, because to my understanding it is actually out of print. And that is the Black Queer Tarot by Kendrick Day. This is a photography and collage deck. It's really beautiful. And it includes some historical figures in the deck, which I think is really cool. This deck, as I understand it, there was a large separate guidebook. I was not able to find a copy of that. I would love to find a copy of that someday if I can. Someone that I know from Tarot Sphere let me know that this was available through an eBay shop and said, have you gotten this yet? Like, check this out. And so I had bookmarked it and I'd been thinking about it and I've been thinking about it. And of course, Pride Month rolled around for June and I was thinking about it even more. And so I decided to pick up a copy. And I have been loving this. This is a deck that's really beautiful. And when I was deciding to order it, I watched an interview on YouTube with Kendrick Day, the creator, and I really enjoyed listening to Kendrick's perspectives. And, he talked about inspiration of Octavia Butler, who's one of my favorite authors, and this kind of Afrofuturist lens through which this deck is imagined. And I, after watching that interview, it really cemented to me that this was a deck that I would like to explore. And so I picked it up towards the end of June. And so I've been working with it for a couple of weeks and I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you to the tarot friend for telling me that it was on eBay. I really appreciate that. The last deck that I purchased in the last quarter is one that wasn't really on my radar. But then as soon as it kind of came onto my radar, I knew that I would like to pick up a copy. So, there's a really quick exchange about, what kind of shipping is available and things like that. And once I was sorted out in that way, I ordered it, admittedly somewhat impulsively, but I'm really happy that I did because I think it's awesome. And that is the Diviner Definitions Oracle. This is by Dr. Michael Anthony. It's 111 cards, which is amazing because that's a lot. It comes with a little guidebook. Actually, you know what? Not that little. It's not that little of a guidebook. There's 136 pages in the guidebook, so quite substantive. And this is a deck, you know, as the name suggests, Diviner Definitions, is based on dictionary definitions. And I am a bit of a word nerd, admittedly, and so this really appealed to me. And what I thought of when I saw this deck was the idea of working with these to inform creating spreads kind of on the fly. So, you know, drawing a card, and each one has multiple definitions. So drawing a card and then looking at the definitions for inspiration for a couple of different spread positions. And so I've been doing that. I've also been including this in my morning daily draws with some other cards. So maybe draw one of these, as well as a tarot, as well as maybe another oracle, as kind of a, you know, what's going on in my day, have general reading. And I'm finding that this deck really pairs well with just about everything. I haven't tried pairing it with a black and white deck. It's so colorful. But anything else I've had on my table with this Diviner Definitions, they've gone together pretty well. I did not plan specifically getting the Diviner Definitions and the Black Queer Tarot intending to work with them together, but they arrived on the same day. And I have been working with them together and really enjoying the two in combination. So that has also been great. That is the 3 decks, Black Queer Tarot, Diviner Definitions, and Wisdom of Place, that I have bought in the last quarter. Next up is the decks that I received this quarter, but that I had purchased or pre-ordered, you know, or otherwise arranged for prior to that, that I did not purchase in the last quarter, but did get in the last quarter, in other words. And I have 3 of those to share with you as well. It's been a bit of an influx kind of a quarter. And the first one I want to show you is actually a gift, and it was a totally unexpected gift that I very much appreciate from a tarot friend. And this is a deck called Le Petit Oracle des Dames. This is a deck from, as I understand it, 1807. And it's kind of a fortune-telling style deck. You can see it has the playing card inserts in it, and some of the cards are split, you know, with a kind of image at the top and an image at the bottom. Some of them are not. It's a really interesting little deck that I don't know a ton about, you know, the history of, but I think that the illustrations are really interesting, and I'm curious to see what I could do with this. So this is a deck, you know, again, this is a historic deck, and my friend got some files for this deck and was able to print it on kind of print on demand style. So that is, you know, the origin of the copy that I have. I understand this deck to have been printed in Paris in 1807. So it's a cool historic deck that I really appreciate. And my friend also went through and just made some translations of the different titles, because the deck is of course in French. So that's a cool addition as well. And I hope that we can maybe play around with maybe reading with the deck together. I think that would be really fun. So I received that one. I also received 2 Kickstarter decks, which I had backed quite a long time prior, in some cases here. So yeah, an exciting quarter. The first of the 2 Kickstarter decks that I received in the last quarter is the Solus Ocasum Lux Bromalis deck by Usi. And I've had a few Usi decks. I have the Pagan Otherworlds, and I really like it. This is a black and white Pippish deck that is lino cut, which I really like as a format. And when I saw this, I knew that this would be a deck that I would like. You know, if you're familiar with my channel, you may know that I quite like a black and white deck. I have decks in my collection like Thea's Tarot, Heart and Hands. So the kind of limited color palette, and black and white in particular, is something that I really like. This deck does have a couple of cards with red that are very striking, which is a cool addition. I'm just trying to find a minor here to show you. Yeah, I've got things kind of in order-ish. So the wands are batons. The cups look like this. I think they're really neat cups. And then the swords look like this. So they're easily distinguishable from the wands. I will say one thing that I kind of wish they had done with this deck, but that they didn't, is put the count somewhere. Like if there was a little number on the side, that would make this a little bit easier for me, but they're beautiful. And I think the pentacles are my favorite. These are so cool. Look at that. Beautiful. And then the quartz are, you know, very kind of Marseille influenced, I would say, kinds of quartz. They're very beautiful. And then there's a couple of extra cards that came with the deck. This infinity card, and there are some moon phase cards as well. So I have actually not worked with this deck too much since I got it. It just doesn't feel very summery to me, and I would say that that's why I haven't worked with it so much. I really like it. I'm really happy with it. Usi's production is always amazing. The cardstock is beautiful. I really like these patterned green backs. This is like my favorite color. So I'm looking forward to exploring that. There was a book that came separately for this deck. I did not back the campaign for the book. I only got the deck, and it came with a little bag. So I will be exploring that one, in the months to come. And lastly, for decks that I received this quarter, I received the Greenwood Tarot, which I'm sure folks have heard about. This is, of course, a deck that's been out of print for a long time, that has been reprinted, and there's a Kickstarter for it. And I know there are folks that I know who are still waiting for this deck. The fulfillment has been quite a long process. I feel like I was kind of on the later end of receiving, but I know that some people are still waiting. Like there were some folks that had them quite ahead of me, and others that are still waiting. I understand it to be a small team of people trying to do all this kind of mailing everything out, kind of in between everything they're doing in their regular lives. So I'm patient. I am not really bothered by a wait when it comes to a Kickstarter. This came in a couple of different finishes, and we could pick the cardstock finish. And I chose the soft touch, which I understood that I would be getting something like a matte rose petal kind of a finish, and that is what I got. And I will say I'm pretty happy with it. I know that some folks have not been happy with the decks that they got, and some have. The only thing that I don't like is this just feels is not the most protective in terms of boxes, but other than that, and I didn't back it for the box, to be quite honest. Other than that, I'm pretty happy. I find these shuffle pretty well. I think that they will hold up. They feel, to me, of comparable quality to other indie decks that I have gotten. And what drew me to this deck really ultimately, it wasn't one that I had on my kind of unicorn wish list or anything, but what drew me is the fact that I love the Wildwood Tarot. Not uncritically, but it is a deck that for me in my druid practice has become the deck that I read for on holidays. And, I have a special relationship with that Wildwood Tarot for that reason. And so this one being a kind of predecessor to the Wildwood, I was interested in exploring, and I knew a couple of friends who had this deck, like the old version, and, thought that I might get along with it. And so I went for it. And I've enjoyed reading with this deck. I did get the book that came with it. It is as I understand it, pure reprint of the book that existed prior when this deck was initially available. But I will say, since I am familiar with the Wildwood and have read all 3 of the Wildwood books already, I haven't been paying attention to the book with this very much. I've just been reading with the deck. So I've been enjoying this. And I hope that my friends who are still waiting enjoy it when they receive it as well. So those are the decks that I received in the second quarter of 2026. Decks I rehomed this past quarter, the answer is none. There are no decks that I rehomed. I do have a box of decks that I am, thinking about rehoming. I know people call this like purgatory. I was raised Catholic. Like I'm not going to use that language, but I have a bag of decks that I'm considering rehoming. I find it hard to rehome decks from a logistical standpoint. I just don't have the capacity or time to do things like make and manage eBay listings and things like that. And obviously if a deck is mass market, shipping it, things get a bit complicated. I haven't really done much deck selling, and I've done a little bit of trades, but that's been about it. I do have a plan. There's a tarot store a couple of hours from my house that sometimes has, out of print decks or things like that. I may take a box of decks there and see if they would be interested in selling any of them. I'll probably just, offer them. Like I don't need any money for them necessarily, but I haven't rehomed anything this past quarter. Finally, I want to share with you the current state of my to explore list of decks that I am considering adding to my collection, decks that I want to learn more about, and in some cases, decks that are firmly on the wish list. I have changed the structure of my to explore list since the last time I shared this. The last time I shared my list, I mentioned that I was only including decks that were, in some sense, reasonably available. So either decks that are in print or decks that are, kind of definitely coming back into print. Some mass market decks, things like that. Decks that I could feasibly actually get if I explored them and decided I wanted to do so. So I wasn't including things like out of print unicorn decks or forthcoming decks that are not yet available. I've decided to change that, and I've decided to put my 2 unicorn decks and the handful of forthcoming decks on my list too. I set aside 4 pages of my planner for this to explore list. The pages look like this, like lined pages. And so far in my 2026 planner, I had filled like only half a page. So out of 4. So I figured why not put all the decks that I'm kind of interested in one way or another in one place. It feels like it makes sense to me, even though probably with the unicorn decks, they're just going to keep being on the list year after year. That's okay. So what is on my to explore wish list right now? I have still, it was on my list last time, it still is, Todd Alcott's Sci-Fi Tarot. This is a really cool looking deck that looks like kind of sci-fi movie posters. It catches my eye every time I see it. I love science fiction, as many of you know. The thing that holds me back is how much text is on the card, and I need to decide how I feel about that. I think I need to watch a full flip through of this deck as opposed to just keep watching videos here and there where people are using the deck. I think I need to just look at the whole deck and decide whether it's for me or not. I think that it is, it's a really cool style though, and I really like the looks of it. So that one is on my list. I have the Echo Tarot on my list. This is a Game Crafter deck. This is kind of pippish, monochromatic deck that comes in a couple of different colorways. I really like the blue one specifically. I like the blue Echo Tarot. Now, I'm going to leave this on my list. I'm not sure. This is very much a deck that feels like one that I would use. I can imagine taking this one kind of out and about with me. I really like the way the minors are done. There's a lot I like about the Echo Tarot. That said, I just got a beautiful black and white pip style tarot deck into my collection this past quarter with the Lux Bromalis deck by Usi. And so adding another deck with some similarities in terms of also being a limited color palette, pippish style deck just feels less pressing, I guess. Not that any of this really feels pressing, but feels less pressing considering that I just got this beautiful deck in by Usi that does have some similarities. So I'm keeping the Echo Tarot on my list. I think it's really cool. I think I'll probably get it at some point, but maybe just not right now. I have the Swamp Witch Oracle on my list. This is inspired by Southwest Michigan ecology. And I lived in Michigan for a very short period of time while I was doing research in grad school, and I grew up in Ontario. So there's a lot of shared, animals and plants in this deck as what I'm used to in the places that I've lived. And so that makes it really appealing to me. I love a nature-based oracle deck, of course. I like the keywords that the creator has chosen from what I've seen. And I think the artwork is beautiful. So that one is on my list. I have the Hafez divination cards on my list. These have caught my eye a couple of times. I think they're gorgeous. I think I need to watch a walkthrough and see if I think that it's something that I would actually use. But I don't have too many decks in my collection that are text-based, we'll say, in the way that the Hafez divination cards are. And I find that appealing. And I think that the deck is just beautiful. So that is on my list. I have put the Pressed Flower Tarot on my list. I have been seeing people get the Pressed Flower Tarot and showing it off and using it in their readings on TarotTube, and I just think it's stunning. I think that the Pressed Flower Tarot is really cool in its kind of texture. The art feels very textural to me, which is something that I generally find appealing. In decks like Tarot of the North Atlantic, for example, which has a lot of kind of stitching and embroidery in the artwork, I really like that textural element. Or like Living Altar, that's a very textural deck as well. And that's really catching my eye about the Pressed Flower Tarot. Do I need another deck in my collection that is a flower-related tarot when I do already have one? I'm not sure. I need to think on this one and need to know that I would be using it if I was to get it, but I think it's absolutely beautiful. So I have my eye on it for sure. The two that are unicorn decks that I wrote down, that I won't spend too much time talking about because I know that they are not available, are the Collective Tarot and the Delta Enduring Tarot. These are the two out-of-print decks that I pine for. If there was a reprint of either one of these decks, I would be backer number one no matter what time of day that thing went live. I would be in on that pre-order so fast for either of these decks. I have seen them once or twice on eBay in the time that I've been looking for them, but not in a way that I would be comfortable spending that amount of money in terms of my budget and my divination collection spreadsheet and what I've spent previously, and what I'd be willing to spend on a single deck. Like I've never spent on an out of print deck in the ways that sometimes these get posted. So I think unless there's a reprint, these are really unlikely to ever join my collection. But they're two queer decks that I missed that I adore. And so I'm crossing my fingers for reprints. I'm hopeful. and I'll keep them on my list, just, to put that out there into the universe. A forthcoming deck that I have no idea what the release plan is for, if there's a date for it or anything like that, but it's one that I've been watching for a while, is the Aquarius Rising Oracle by Charlie Claire Burgess. This is a playing card style deck that is, of course, by the creator of Gay Marseille and Fifth Spirit Tarot, both decks that I love. And whenever this launches or comes available in whatever way that's going to happen, I imagine that I will get this. It's not available now. It's been a kind of work in progress on Charlie's website for quite some time, so I'm hopeful that sometime soon there will be some news about this deck coming available. So I'm keeping my eye out for that. Also forthcoming, that I don't have too much to say about because there's not too much out there yet. But I know that Dana O'Driscoll, who created the Tarot of Trees and created the Tree Lore Oracle, both of which are decks that I really love. I think the Tree Lore Oracle probably has the best guidebook of any oracle I've ever owned. One of them anyway. I know that Dana O'Driscoll is working on another deck, and I know that that deck will have gnomes. I'm not sure what the release plan is. I'm not sure when it might come available, but I'm very keen to see what that deck will be like when it does come available. Very curious. And finally, last but not least, but the last most recent addition that I have added to this written list is the 8th House Tarot. The 8th House Tarot is an available deck. It's in print, to my knowledge, indie deck, I think. And the 8th House Tarot is an astrology-based tarot deck. I am interested in finding an astrology tarot deck that I like. Astrology tarot correspondences are not a thing that I've done much with. I do have some astrology themed oracle decks like the Arcana of Astrology by Claire Goodchild, for example, that I use a lot for kind of display cards on my reading table and things like that. But a deck like this would be very different in my collection. It's not an art style that I'm usually drawn to, but there's something about it that it keeps catching my attention. There's a couple of tarot tubers who I will blame or credit for kind of sharing this deck in a way that has made me interested in it in ways that I have not been before. So I'm keeping my eye on it. Again, this is the to explore list. I don't anticipate necessarily getting this immediately, but it's definitely one that I plan to watch a couple of walkthroughs of because I do find something about it quite intriguing. And I feel like it might be a cool one to work with if I ever do get to a deck and walk, which I know I will, but not this year. So that one I'm keeping an eye on as well. That is the totality of my to explore list. If there are any decks that you're waiting for their release or keeping an eye out for, let me know in the comments. And of course, let me know, if there are any decks that you know of that you think that I would love, that you don't think that I've seen or that you don't think that I have. I would be very curious, and open to hearing those kinds of deck suggestions. If you work with a deck you think I would love to try, I would be very curious. I'm someone who, at least for the last little while, has really not been on any social media at all. I deleted my Instagram. I'm not on Facebook or any of these other, this is kind of it. So I am aware that decks are, being shared, that are coming out soon or have been released, and I don't hear about them. So, I am always happy to be pointed towards something that someone thinks that I might really get along with. I'm always curious to hear. So that's my deck collection update for the second quarter of 2026. If you've gotten in any great decks in your collection in the last couple of months and you want to share, do let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what decks you are loving right now. I will see you all again soon. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.